On today's Murder, She Wrote podcast, we find ourselves in Washington with politicians backstabbing each other and murder. Hello and welcome to the Murder, She Wrote podcast, where I watch every single episode of the hit 80s/90s show Murder, She Wrote, starring 3-time Academy Award nominee and 5-time Tony Award winner Miss Angela Lansbury. Today, I'm going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 12, Capital Offense, air date January 6th, 1985. Happy New Year! Well, it's not New Year's Eve yet here, but it was 2 weeks before this episode aired, so there you go, and it's the first episode in 1985. I'm your host DJ, and no, I was not born yet when this episode aired. I want to thank everyone who has listened to the podcast in the last couple of months. I've gotten a lot more viewers because I've joined a couple of Facebook groups that are big fans of Murder, She Wrote, just like I am. And one person said on my last episode, which was Death Cast a Spell, Heidi said, this was an absolutely funny one. So thank you so much, Heidi, for saying that. I appreciate it. I'm glad that I'm spreading joy in this uncertain time that we're living in. I've been doing this podcast now for 11 months, and I'm still on Season 1. And despite the trials and tribulations I've gone through this year, and people have gone through way worse than me, I'm still going strong and I'm going to get them out. I'm almost done with Season 1, I promise. So thank you so much for your support, and I'm glad you like it, and I wish that I could put this on Spotify or iTunes, but I grew up in the 90s. I don't know how to do it. This is the simplest way that I know how to do this, and everyone seems to be loving it the way it is, so why mess with? So I'm not going to mess with it. Alright. So, let's dive into this episode. I remember seeing a documentary on YouTube once where on YouTube once where it was about the making of the show, and at one point they said they were traveling from location to location when they shot the second episode with Jeff Conway and Jeannie Francis in San Francisco on location, and the episode with Peter Graves, they filmed that on location in Seattle, and they realized at some point during Season 1 that Angela Lansbury could not travel from one location to the next, so they figured it would be much better for her to film the entire show on the Universal backlot. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I don't know if this episode was actually filmed in Washington or if it was filmed on the Universal backlot, because it does not say whether it was or not. So that's the thing. And even though on IMDb this says that this is episode 10, this is actually episode 12 because you don't count the death of Sherlock Holmes as an episode, it was a movie. So this is actually episode 12. But the death of Sherlock Holmes is often syndicated as the first 2 episodes of the series when it's actually the pilot movie. Just figured something I'd tell you. Alright, so we start off this episode with shots of the White House and the Capitol building. And we find ourselves in the penthouse of Mr. Ray Dixon and Joe Brim. They are celebrating the win of a newly elected congressman named Dan Kepner. He has just won the Congress seat, and they're celebrating by drinking, and he is so drunk it's not even funny. So they're celebrating, and Congressman Wendell Joyner knocks at the door. There's a mysterious blonde woman taking pictures with what looks like a letter opener or something to that thing, and it's painfully obvious what she's doing. She's taking pictures, and they don't seem to notice or care. Anyway, Mr. Joyner comes in, and he literally starts yelling at Mr. Dixon and Joe, saying, "How could you do this to him? How could you do this? They got to you. They got to you, Dan. You have to leave. We don't need to be here." And he goes, "What's wrong? Like, what did I do? What's going on?" You know, and he's all like, "I'm gonna bring you up on charges for disciplinary actions. You know, and this is ridiculous." And in his yelling fit, he has a heart attack and dies. And the mysterious blonde woman takes pictures as they're trying to figure out what to do. We then cut to Cabot Cove, where there is a knock on Mrs. Fletcher's door. The governor of Maine has come to see her. He tells her what happened to Congressman Joyner, and he suggests that she take the seat vacant left by him until they can find someone else to take his place. Now, I'm not a political person. I don't know that much about politics. I don't follow them, although I did vote in this election for the first time ever, because I couldn't figure out how to register, and finally I figured it out and was able to do it, and it was so awesome to be able to do that. And I'm glad we have that right to vote in this country. But anyway, I know nothing about politics, so I don't know how they elect a congressman to the Senate in the first place, but I'm pretty sure you can't just get a random person. I mean, okay, in this universe, Mrs. Fletcher is not a random person, but the governor of Maine says she's the most famous resident of Maine. She's not political, and she would be the perfect person to fill the seat until they find someone else. Which is like going up to a sports announcer, you know, who basically talks about the sports and recaps it as it's going on. Like going up to a sports announcer and saying, "Hey, we like your voice, and you're really, really good. We don't have a host right now for Chopped. How about you come and fill in?" That would never happen, ever, I don't think, and this probably wouldn't either, because it does not make any sense whatsoever. That she's filling the seat, but I get the plot convenience of why she needs to be in the thick of this, why she needs to be in the middle of it so that she's solving the crime. So that's all fine and good. So we get to Washington, and this is another reason why I say I'm not sure if they actually filmed this in Washington, because when they're driving and they drive past the White House, when they're in the car, you have that effect that they used to do way back when, where they would put the car sort of on rollers, making it look like it was running, and then there's like a projected image behind them of cars behind them driving. And I think that's yeah, and now it's a green screen, but that's how they used to do it, which I find fascinating. So Mrs. Fletcher comes to Washington, and she immediately is introduced to Joe, who worked for Mr. Joyner. He's apparently like his press agent, looks things up for him and all that stuff. And we also get introduced to Dana Sims, who is his personal secretary, and who was his personal secretary. And apparently when a new congressman gets elected or comes in, they have the right to fire the previous staff of the previous congressperson. And Dana Sims assumes that Mrs. Fletcher is going to do that, even though Mrs. Fletcher is not a political person. So why would she think she was going to do that? Who knows? But she says, Dana, do you like your job? And she goes, yes. Then she goes, then we don't need your resignation. And she keeps Joe as well. We then get introduced to like a reporter named Kay Shepard and this guy named Thor, who are having an affair, and was also there the night that Congressman Kefner died of his heart attack, because apparently, for some reason, and do not ask me why, I don't know, even though the Congressman Joyner had his heart attack in Mr. Dixon's penthouse, they moved the body and put him in some random woman's bed and said he had a heart attack there. This does not make any sense, because whether or not he was in somebody's bed, or he was in the penthouse, or he was on a sidewalk, the death would come back as heart attack. So I don't understand, I really don't, why they would do this. Because what would happen to them if they found out that he was in their penthouse? They were having a party. It doesn't make any sense to me. So briefly in the hallway, Mrs. Fletcher meets Mr. Kepner, and he says he looks forward to meeting her at another date since she's very busy. Joe takes her back to her hotel room, and we notice that there is a strange man in the lobby watching them. And yes, it is, I'm not lying, the love interest of that woman I mentioned's real name, they actually did call him Thor. And he does not look like Chris Hemsworth, let me tell you. Anyway, Mrs. Fletcher goes up to her hotel room and goes over Mr. Dixon's proposal for a new cannery. And her phone rings, and it's Mr. Kepner. He wants to meet her and discuss what happened to Congressman Joyner. Unfortunately, it's nighttime, she's reading, and she's ready to go to bed, so he asks if it's okay for him to come in the morning for breakfast. She says yes, they pick a time, and then he leaves the bar. The mysterious blonde woman is revealed to be Martha Craig, no relation to me or my last name, it's spelled completely differently. But anyway, she is scared because she knows the truth of what happened, and no one is allowed to reveal the truth of what happened. Mr. Kepner does not seem to know what she's talking about. He seems to have forgotten what happened that night until she shows him a photo that she took. And she says, I'm scared. At first, I thought I would be safe, but now I'm not so sure. And then there's a cut, and it's the next day, and he's in an alley, and a homeless man is taking away his wallet. He runs after him, and the police eventually get the man with the wallet, and he finds that he has blood on him and has no idea how he got into the alley, or what was the name of the bar that he ducked into, that he went into to call Mrs. Fletcher. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Mrs. Fletcher is walking around, and that same strange man in the lobby follows her. She then goes down some stairs, goes onto another stairwell, alerting him, and then comes out and says, "Looking for me? Who are you and why are you following me?" She's amazing, isn't she? He reveals that he is the Detective Lieutenant Arbery Masalone. I can't pronounce his last name, I'm sorry. So we'll just call him Detective Lieutenant. And he reveals that he suspects foul play because he suspects that Mr. Joyner's body was moved and that he did not die in the bed with the woman that they found him in. Again, why do they do that? So then the detective gets a page and he calls the police station and finds that Mr. Kepner is there. After asking Mrs. Fletcher if she knew anything about Mr. Kepner, she claims that, "As a matter of fact, detective, we were supposed to have breakfast this morning, but he did not show up," and then they find out he's at the police station, so they both go. Mr. Kepner says that he does not remember how he got in the alleyway, and he doesn't know how the blood got on him. The detective immediately assumes that he's guilty, but Mrs. Fletcher says, no, he's not. Sorry, I had to get a drink of coffee. She demonstrates to the detective that if Mr. Kepner was knocked out, when you're carrying a body, you would have to put an unconscious man, you would have to put your hands in front of his chest, which is how you would get blood and makeup on his shirt that way, because there wasn't enough blood to match, apparently, Miss Craig getting beat to death, which is apparently how she died. Oh yeah, I forgot, I'm sorry. Kay Shepard is not having an affair with Thor. It's actually Dana that has the affair with Thor. And I think Thor is also with Kay Shepard, who's a reporter or whatever. Believe me, Thor has really no significance, and neither does Kay Shepard. They sort of appear once, and then we don't see them again. But they're in it. But anyway, later on that day, Mr. Kepner goes to Mrs. Fletcher's office, and he tells her the reason why Mr. Joyner was so upset that night. It was because Mr. Kepner is a recovering alcoholic, and Mr. Dixon and Joe, and I think Harold DeWitt and Wendell Joyner was also there, got him drunk. And he fell off the wagon, and that's why he couldn't remember anything, because it had been so long since he had alcohol. But he said that since Mr. Joyner died, he has not drunk at all, so he does not know how he got into that alley, and he does not remember the name of the bar. He can't remember anything. He doesn't know what happened. Mrs. Fletcher suggests maybe he was chloroformed or drugged. So Mrs. Fletcher has Joe get background on Martha Craig and the other congressmen's, and also she asks Dana to get all the other proposals that Mr. Dixon had proposed for the cannery, because she's like, some of this is not adding up to me, and I want the full picture before I decide on what I'm going to vote for. So Joe eventually gets the information for her and claims that that there's literally no background on Martha Craig. That she seems like your typical run-of-the-mill girl. And he says that Mr. Kepner went to the Seaside Bar and met up with her there. And he said, and beyond that, that's all he knows. And that Mr. Kepner never denied knowing this poor girl, but he denies killing her. So Mrs. Fletcher goes back to her office, and the meeting about the cannery proposal is about to happen in 2 hours, and she's going to go to her office and read a couple more papers to prepare for it. And Paula says, well, there's this really nice restaurant downtown that has a really nice salad bar. How about we go there before the meeting happens, so that you're not, because sometimes these meetings can run long. Mrs. Fletcher stops and stares at her door and basically is like, has her epiphany moment, and she's like, actually, I have an errand to run. She goes across town, goes to Joe's office, and she says, I believe, because she just talked to Mr. Dixon, who's like, I really want you to come over to my side, Mrs. Fletcher. And I was so sad to hear about Congressman Joyner's death. And she says, you know, it's amazing to me that you can stand there and lie, look me in the eye and lie to my face. She said, Mr. Kepner told me that Mr. Joyner had his heart attack in your penthouse, and it was your idea to move his body. Well, if they had found him in my penthouse, it would have ruined me. How? Why? I don't understand. How would it ruin you? He had a heart attack. You didn't kill him. I don't get it. It's never explained, believe me. So Mrs. Fletcher basically dismisses him and goes off to see Joe, and she tells Joe that she suspects that Ray Dixon is the killer because he stood the most to gain, and the photos that Martha Craig took are probably in his penthouse somewhere. And if they could just get into the penthouse to find those photos, they will find them, and Mr. Dixon is Mr. Dixon is the killer. So Mrs. Fletcher ends up going to the committee meeting. She's late, but she's able to speak, and she basically has this wonderful speech. She says, and I quote, I have gone over Mr. Dixon's proposal for a new cannery, and I've also gone over several proposals that he's had. He's had about 10 to 12 different canneries throughout the state of Maine. There's also one that was shut down in my hometown of Cabot Cove, and he's wanting to open another one. I think what Mr. Dixon should do is, instead of opening a new cannery where he can have people with new jobs, he should open the canneries that he already has that he has closed. Because that could bring a lot of jobs, especially in the city where I live. So I propose that this proposal be dismissed and that Mr. Dixon focus on the canneries that he already has, instead of trying to focus on opening a new one. And the proposal is dismissed, and that's what Mr. Dixon has to do. And that's a good lesson. Instead of building more and more canneries, work with what you got. They need to start doing that in America. Instead of knocking stuff down and building something new, or abandoning it, they should work with it, fix it up, and give it to someone who really needs it. Or open it up and have more jobs and stuff like that. I swear I'm not political. Anyway, so that we then find ourselves in Mr. Dixon's penthouse, and he basically, he's not there. Someone's breaking in, and it turns out to be Joe to plant the photos, because Joe is our killer. Mrs. Fletcher basically breaks it down like this. Joe gave himself away when he revealed the bar that Mr. Kepner had stepped into to phone her on the telephone, because Mr. Kepner couldn't remember the bar. And Martha was scared and was going to go to the police. And for some reason, that wasn't a good thing for Joe. So he beat her to death. And he says, well, I'm not doing anything different than anyone else in this town has done. And she says, yes, there are liars and backstabbers, but not all everyone in this town is a murderer. And that's where the episode ends. This episode did not have a lot of twists and turns. There was not any red herrings to try to get us off on a different track or anything like that. It was straight and to the point. I know they get better. There was some recognizable guest stars in this that I recognized, but not a lot, and let's go over them. Edie Adams played the role of Kay Shepherd, who really didn't have a big, huge role in the episode, like I said, so let's see what she's known for. She unfortunately passed away in 2008 at the age of 81. She is known for It's a Mad, Mad World. I love that movie. Up in Smoke, Cheech and Chong. The Apartment, and she played the fairy godmother in 1957's Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella with Julie Andrews. Her last known credit is great performances in 2004 as the fairy godmother again. So she played that. She guest starred on Designing Women, love that show. Tales of the City. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. She was also in As the World Turns, Fantasy Island, Bosom Buddies, The Love Boat, Love American Style, The Red Skeleton Hour, The Dick Powell Theater, It's a Mad, Mad World, Under the Yum Yum Tree. She had quite an impressive career. She appeared in 63 different things. Good for her. Okay, next up, playing the lieutenant detective was Herschel Bernardi. He is known for, hold on, he tragically died in he died in 1986 at the age of 62. He is known for Peter Gunn, the TV show, Murder by Contract, Artie. He was in 91 different things. His last known credit is Taking It Home, a TV short. He guest starred on Highway to Heaven. This is obviously his only episode of Murder, She Wrote because he died in 1986. He appeared in a TV miniseries called Seventh Avenue, a TV show called Arnie, Ronan and Martin's Laugh-In. He had quite the impressive career. He was a really great detective. He was one of the few detectives on the show that lets her help solve the crime and doesn't, get angry that she's trying. Dana Sims was played by Linda Kelsey. She is still alive. She's known for Lou Grant, the spinoff from Mary Tyler Moore Show, another one of my favorites. Day by Day, a TV show from 1988. Eleanor and Franklin, and Matlock, another one of my favorite shows. She's been in 53 different things. Her last known credit is 2010's The Egg Turner. It's a short. She guest starred on Touched by an Angel. This is not her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. She will appear in a handful of others. She also guest starred in ER, another one of my favorite shows. Matlock, like I said. Father Downey Mysteries, the Ray Bradley Theater, good show. CBS After School Special, The Twilight Zone. Saint Elsewhere, MASH. So she's had quite the impressive career. You go, girl. And I didn't recognize her. Congressman Kepner was played by Stephen M. Marhot. I can't say his last name, I'm so sorry. He's still alive. He's known for The Monster Squad, Graveyard Shift, Tracers 4, and Cagney and Lacey. He is still alive and he's acting to this day. His last known credit is 2019's video short Alexander Pierre, As Long As You Need Me, as a grandfather. He guest starred on Suits. He was on General Hospital, Boston Public, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Sliders, another great show, Jag, another great show, Melrose Place, love that, One Life to Live, and this is not his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He'll appear in a handful of others. Star Trek Deep Sea Nine, Annieville, 1992, It's About Time, Cagney and Lacey, like I said. He's been in 95 different things, so he's had a long, impressive career. Can't wait to see what other characters he plays. Harry Purnell, which appeared as a friend of Ray Dixon that tried to get Mrs. Fletcher on his side, was played by Nicholas Palmer. Or Pryor, sorry. He was only in that one scene, so I forgot about him until now. I apologize, it's hard to remember everything. He's known for Risky Business, The Omen 2, Hunger Games, Mockingjay, and Murder at 1600. He's still alive. His last known credit, and he's still acting, is from the TV series The Outsider. He's been in 168 different things. He guest starred on Nashville, Hornet's Nest, that's a movie, I'm sorry, Heart of Dixie, October Road Without a Trace, NYPD Blue, Diagnosis Murder, Port Charles, good soap opera, The West Wing, The Guardian, Party of Five, also a good show, Beverly Hills 90210, the original, Silk Stockings, Diagnosis Murder, Murder at 16,000, like I said, Trial by Fire. He was in a Cagney and Lacey movie. He was in a Waltons movie. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Madlock, LA Law. This will not be his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He'll appear in 2 others. Growing Pains, Pacific Heights, 227, awesome, hilarious show. Moonlighting, Who's the Boss? So he's had quite an impressive career. You go, sir. Too bad he was only in one scene. Ray Dixon was played by Mitchell Ryan, Mitchell Ryan, my bad. He is still alive to this day. He's known for Goose Point Blank, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, Liar, Liar, and Lethal Weapon. He's been in 135 different things. His last known credit is 2005's Love for Rent as a doctor, but he was uncredited. He was on The Drew Carey Show, The West Wing, Justice League, Dorma and Greg, the miniseries Aftershock Earthquake in New York. Loved that miniseries. Wings, Silk Stockings. This will not be his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He'll appear in a handful of others. Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, which was not a great film. He appeared in a Heart to Heart movie. He guest starred on NYPD Blue, Madlock. I also just saw him recently in this movie I watched called In a Child's Name. Such a good movie with Valerie Bertinelli. You should watch that on YouTube. LA Law, Who's the Boss, Santa Barbara, Star Trek The Next Generation. So he's had quite the impressive career. And can't wait to see what other characters he plays on Murder, She Wrote. Our killer, Joe, was played by Gary Sandy. He's still alive, and he is known for The Insider, WKRP in Cincinnati, The Young and the Restless, and Starsky and Hutch, the show. He's been in 38 different things. His last known credit is a TV movie in 2004 called A Place Called Home. He was on The Young and the Restless as Terrence Kelly. He guest starred on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Diagnosis Murder. Ooh, he was in one of my favorite Christmas movies, Unlikely Angel, with Dolly Parton. This is not his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He'll appear in one other one. He guest starred on LA Law. He was in the first Troll movie. He played Andy Travis on WKRP in Cincinnati television series. He guest starred on Chips, Starsky and Hutch. So he's had... Oh, and he was also on Another World. That was one of my grandma's favorite soaps. So he's had quite the career. Good for him. Okay, Thor was played by Mark Shea, and I don't think he's known for much. I mean, he didn't do much in the episode. He's still alive. He's known for Taken. I think that's like a miniseries or something, I'm not sure. Barnaby Jones, SWAT, and Black Mask. He's been in 23 different things. Yeah, Taken was a TV miniseries. That was his last known credit. He was on Beverly Hills 90210, Darnett, and this will not be his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He'll appear in a couple others. He was in New Love, American Style, Barnaby Jones, The Love Boat, SWAT, Gunsmoke, and Kojak. So he's had quite the career. Frank Otter played Wendell Joyner, our murder victim. He died in 2009 at the age of 83. He is known for Toro, 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 The Fall Guy, It's About Time, and Nancy. He was in 116 different things, and he looks so familiar to me. His last known credit is 1996 television series The Lizards Man? Unknown. Okay. I don't know. He guest starred on Matlock, Falcon Crest, TJ Hooker, Dallas. Oh, the Golden Girls in the pilot episode. He played Harry, the guy that Blanche marries, and it turns out that he's a bigamist. I knew he looked familiar, and I've seen that episode so many times. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I totally missed that, but yeah, that's where I know him from. I saved this at this part in the episode so I can be just as surprised as you guys when I'm talking about this. This is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He also got started on Three's a Crowd, spin-off from Three's Company, Hotel, Simon and Simon, The Facts of Life, Alice, Quincy M.E., Chips, Capital, which was a soap opera, Three's Company, Lou Grant, Hello Larry, The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Policewoman, All in the Family, What's Happening, The Invisible Man, Marcus Webby, MD, Kojak, SWAT, Insight, $6 Million Man, Planet of the Apes, TV series, Wonderful Magical World of Disney, MASH, Ironside, Maude. So he had quite the impressive career. And his legacy lives on in the Golden Girls because everyone knows that episode, the pilot. Kobe Chesler played Harold DeWitt, who also had really nothing to do in the episode except was getting Mrs. Fletcher to try to accept Mr. Dixon's proposal. He's known for Salvador, Fear, First Encounter, Emergency, and The Young and the Restless. He was in 75 different things. He's still alive, and he's apparently doing a movie in pre-production called Constantine the Great. His last known credit is 2010 Monday Night Combat video game. He did some voiceover work for video games. He starred in a Simon & Simon movie. He was on The Young and the Restless as Michael Crawford. Knots Landing. This is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He guest starred on The Facts of Life, Fantasy Island, Trapper John MD, Dynasty, Vegas, Lou Grant, Mrs. Columbo, From Here to Eternity, TV series, Sword of Justice, Duke of Hazzard, Harvey Korman Show, Harvey Girls, Nancy Drew Mysteries. So he's had quite the impressive career, despite not being able to do anything in this episode. Let's see. Who did Martha Craig play? Huh. The actress that played Martha Craig is not credited. I don't know. And her name's not on. Oh. Gwen Humble was uncredited for being our other murder victim. She's still alive. She's known for Being There, Jag, and The American Way. She was in 27 different things. Her last known credit is Jag. She guest starred on Lovejoy, Absolutely Fabulous, Werewolf. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote where she was uncredited. She also guest starred on Three's Company, Chips. So it's a shame. She was really good in that she was uncredited for that role. But that's all the guest stars, guys. Like I said, there wasn't a lot. But overall, it was an okay episode. Maybe upon rewatch, I really necessarily probably wouldn't watch this one. But more to come soon. I hope everyone has a wonderful, safe Thanksgiving, and everyone's wearing their mask. And I'll see you in the next one. Happy crime solving.